Está con nosotros Matt Jones, gestor del fondo Fidelity Absolute Return Global Equity Fund. Matt, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having this time with us. You're welcome. What's your point of view about the global market in this moment?
Yeah, extremely fragile, extremely volatile, as we all know, and we've seen overnight with China announcing massive stimulus. You've got macro shocks, economic shocks coming in. You've got lots of risk. I mean, people forget it's not just about inflation and interest rates at the moment. You've got geopolitical risks, we'll probably talk about in a second, between US and China. You know, we've got PMIs coming out that are quite scary. Fed doing 50 bip cuts, possibly another 50 bips. And don't forget, you know, we've got Israel and conflict still going on over there. On top of that, you've still got issues in Ukraine. So, you know, there's just many different factors going on driving the markets. It's volatility, and it's volatility on top of volatility. I think it's a very fractious and risky environment.
What's the key drivers that the investor have to be in this moment? Inflation, central banks, but geopolitical situation, United States anti-election from the 5th of November.
Yeah, I think from an investor point of view, and it comes from both directions, top down and bottom up. In these kind of risky environments, it's all about being diversified. You don't want any big bets anywhere, because, you know, if you have a big bet somewhere and that goes wrong, that's quite risky, and you get drawdowns, and it's costly to everybody.
What is the sector and the asset class that you think that is more reliable about this situation and this volatile situation in the global markets?
Yeah, I think from a sector point of view, if you were looking this traditionally, you'd think about, you know, if you're looking about interest rates, you might say, look, let's invest in sectors that are negatively correlated to that, something like maybe utilities, or you want to go a bit defensive because of that geopolitical risk. But I think, you know, we need to look a bit beyond that. It's not as heuristic as an approach as that. I think you need to go back to basics and focus on stocks that have deep kind of fundamentals. They're fundamentally sound. They've got good growth prospects. They've got good management. You want to go from a bottom-up safety point of view and diversify across a number of sectors. You know, utilities have changed over the years. You know, the utility companies aren't just water and electricity utility companies now. They're green energy. They're decarbonization. So a lot of these sectors traditionally will diversify you away from a lot of the risk.
How these geopolitical problems, risk, play a role in your portfolio?
Yeah, in our portfolios, again, you know, we try to minimize that risk. What we do best at Fidelity is pick stocks, and we want to focus on that stock-specific risk and those stock-picking capabilities. So if you focus on that stock-specific risk and you have great underlying companies in your portfolio, you can minimize all the other exposures, and your portfolio ends up being less volatile and more uncorrelated to these types of moves.
When we wake up, when the investors wake up on 5th of August, and they said Japan more than 10% of go down the market, we see all the volatilities. And you said one of the key factors, the main factors in this moment. How in this portfolio could play a role, this volatility? How the investor could put different things with there?
Yeah, I guess it goes back to that basic concept of diversification. So in a strategy like we run, it's very uncorrelated to these moves. So if I was an investor, I'd be looking for highly liquid alternatives, things that aren't heavily exposed to, say, Japan, or heavily exposed to interest rates, or heavily exposed to many of these things. And that way you don't get caught in these big, strong, violent rotations.
Artificial intelligence is one of these topics with the investor.
Yeah.
In the next years, which your prevision or your forecast about how is the knowledge about them?
Yeah, I think artificial intelligence is really important. And I think it will affect different investors and different strategies in different ways. So if you're a more pure quantitative house, then you might use it more directly in your investment process. I think as a more fundamental house doing the deep research, you have analysts and people on the ground. Artificial intelligence will help make their roles more efficient. So an analyst might not have to update their financial numbers. That gets automatically done. An analyst might not have to read, you know, the company's notes. That'll get automatically done for them. And they'll be focusing their time on making sure they have the best ideas, you know, the stocks we should buy versus the stocks we should sell. Speaking of Japan, I'd talk about more the Kaizen approach. So I think artificial intelligence on the margin will help improve efficiencies and overall kind of economic marginal growth on the edge.
Only one question. What's your point of view about Europe and the economy here in Europe?
Yeah, again, Europe's made up of many different countries going through different changes and different cycles. You've got government change in the UK, you've got government spending, you've got Germany, issues currently in Germany, as you mentioned, and we spoke of earlier, the PMIs are getting hit quite hard. I think that the prospects here are a little bit different to say, the US, and with changes in government, a little bit more fragile. But then there's lots of levers to be pulled. I mean, people are worried about interest rates, but the central banks and governments have that lever to pull now. They never had that 10 years ago in a zero interest rate environment. So I think there's a lot of flexibility and room to see some kind of prosperity and growth in the long run.
What do you think that the European Central Bank could make the next movement in October or in December, and how quantity do you think?
Well, being a bottom-up stock-picking equities person, my views on rates are never that great. I think they're going to be heavily influenced by what's going on in the US and Japan, so they don't want to get behind the curve themselves. I mean, I think you could possibly see some more cuts coming a bit stronger on the back of what China's doing and on the back of what the US is doing as well.
Thank you very much for having this time with us. Matt Jones es gestor del fondo Fidelity Absolute Return Global Equity Fund. Good day, good business.
Thank you. You're welcome.